Eugene Levy had always been known for two things: his unmistakable thick eyebrows and his calm, gentle humor. For decades, audiences around the world had trusted that smile, the kind that made people feel safe, welcome, and understood. From sitcoms to heartfelt interviews, Eugene carried himself like a man who had nothing to prove. That's why no one, absolutely no one, expected what was about to unfold on the Loose Women's set that morning. The studio buzzed with its usual energy. Cameras were being adjusted, makeup artists moved quickly, and the panelists laughed lightly as they prepared for the live broadcast. Denise Welch sat confidently at the table, flipping through her cue cards, already warming up her voice with sharp remarks and playful jabs. She was known for being outspoken, sometimes brutally so, and she wore that reputation like a badge of honor. "Today's going to be fun," Denise said with a grin, glancing at the producer. "He seems nice enough. Let's see how thick-skinned he really is." Eugene Levy entered the studio moments later, greeting everyone politely. He shook hands, thanked the crew, and even cracked a small joke about British weather that earned a few polite laughs. To the audience, he looked relaxed, almost too relaxed. But inside, Eugene carried a quiet resolve. This interview mattered to him more than anyone realized. As the show went live, the host introduced him warmly, praising his legendary career and recent projects. Applause filled the studio. Eugene nodded graciously, smiling as he always did. Denise leaned forward. "So, Eugene," she began, tilting her head, "you've built a career playing awkward, slightly clueless men. Do you think that's all you're really capable of, or is Hollywood just too lazy to imagine you differently?" A few audience members laughed nervously. Eugene blinked, surprised but composed. "Well," he replied carefully, "I think comedy often reveals more truth about humanity than drama does. Those characters, awkward as they may seem, are deeply human." Denise smirked. "Or deeply repetitive," she shot back. "Some would say you've been playing the same role for 40 years. The air shifted. The other panelists exchanged quick glances. This was sharper than expected. Eugene chuckled softly, trying to diffuse the moment. "I suppose consistency can be mistaken for limitation," he said. "But audiences seemed to connect with it." Denise wasn't satisfied. "Do they?" she asked, raising an eyebrow, "or are they just nostalgic? Comfort watching an old formula instead of demanding real evolution." This time, the laughter didn't come. Eugene's smile tightened, just slightly, but enough for the cameras to catch it. Years of interviews had taught him patience, but something about Denise's tone felt less curious and more dismissive. "I believe growth doesn't always mean changing who you are," Eugene said. "Sometimes it means refining it." Denise leaned back, folding her arms. "That sounds like something someone says when they're afraid to take risks." There it was. A quiet murmur rippled through the audience. The host attempted to jump in, but Denise continued, her voice rising just enough to dominate the table. "Let's be honest, Eugene. If you weren't harmless and lovable, would you even still be here? Or is that image the only thing protecting you from being forgotten?" The studio went completely silent. For the first time since the show began, Eugene Levy did not respond immediately. He looked down at the table, adjusting his glasses. When he finally looked up, the warmth in his eyes was gone, not replaced by anger, but by something deeper. Something wounded. "I've spent my life creating joy," he said slowly. "Not to be harmless, but to be honest. If that's seen as weakness, then perhaps the problem isn't my career." Denise laughed, sharp and unapologetic. "Oh come on, don't get sensitive. This is Loose Women. We ask real questions." Eugene leaned forward now, his voice still calm, but firmer. "There's a difference," he said, "between real questions and cheap provocation." The audience gasped. Denise's expression hardened. "Are you accusing me of being cheap?" "I'm saying," Eugene replied, choosing each word carefully, "that respect doesn't disappear just because the cameras are on." The host tried to intervene again, but the tension had already exploded beyond control. Denise pointed her finger slightly, subtle, but aggressive. "If you can't handle a strong woman challenging you, maybe you shouldn't be here." That was the moment. Eugene slowly removed his microphone. "I've handled criticism my entire life," he said, standing up. "What I won't handle is being reduced for entertainment." The studio erupted, voices overlapping, producers shouting from off-camera. "Eugene, please," the host began. But Eugene had already taken a step back. If this conversation requires me to be humiliated to be interesting, he added, then this isn't a conversation I want to be part of. A producer rushed toward him, whispering urgently. Denise shook her head, muttering something about overreacting. Then the director made the call. Cut his mic, someone said. The red light above the camera blinked. And just like that, Eugene Levy was escorted off the Loose Women set, his calm dignity clashing violently with the chaos behind him. As he disappeared backstage, the audience sat stunned. Denise broke the silence with a shrug. Well, she said coolly, that escalated. But outside the studio doors, Eugene leaned against the wall, breathing deeply, his hands trembling slightly. For the first time in decades, the man known for laughter felt something else entirely. And this was only the beginning. The corridor behind the Loose Women studio was colder than the brightly lit set, both in temperature and mood. Eugene Levy stood there, hands pressed against the wall, eyes closed, trying to steady his breathing. The distant hum of the live broadcast leaked through thick doors, muffled but persistent, like a reminder that the world was still watching, even if he was no longer on screen. A young production assistant hovered nearby, unsure whether to speak. I'm sorry about what happened, she finally said. Eugene opened his eyes and offered a faint smile. None of this is your fault, he replied softly. You did your job. Moments later, a senior producer approached, headset still around his neck, face tight with frustration. You blindsided us, the producer said in a low voice. Walking off like that, on live television. Eugene straightened. With respect, he answered calmly, I was blindsided first. The producer hesitated. He had expected anger, maybe even shouting. Instead, Eugene's composure made the situation feel heavier, more serious. You know Denise's style, the producer continued. She pushes buttons. She didn't push, Eugene said. She dismissed. The producer sighed. Look, the segment's gone viral already. Clips are spreading fast. Eugene nodded. He had suspected as much. Back on the set, the atmosphere had shifted dramatically. Denise Welch sat back in her chair, arms crossed, jaw tight. The other panelists avoided eye contact, flipping pages or adjusting their microphones. The host tried to steer the conversation forward, but it felt forced, hollow. So, moving on, the host said awkwardly. But Denise wasn't done. I don't see what the fuss is, she said, her voice sharp. If he can't handle honesty, that's not my problem. One panelist finally spoke up. Denise, there's honesty, and then there's going too far. Denise turned to her, eyes flashing. Oh please. We're not here to coddle celebrities. Yet even she could sense something had gone wrong. The laughter she thrived on wasn't coming. The audience's applause was thin, hesitant. Meanwhile, outside the studio, Eugene's phone began vibrating nonstop. Messages, missed calls, notifications, his publicist, fellow actors, old friends. He glanced at one message from a longtime colleague. You didn't deserve that. Proud of you for standing your ground. Eugene exhaled slowly. What viewers didn't know, what Denise couldn't have known, was that Eugene hadn't come to Loose Women just to promote a project. Earlier that morning, he had received news that shook him deeply. A former collaborator, someone he considered family, was critically ill. The interview had already felt like an obligation performed on fragile emotional footing. And then came the mockery. The reduction of a lifetime of work into a punchline. The dismissal of kindness as weakness. It hit a nerve that was already raw. Back inside the control room, producers argued in hushed but heated tones. We should have stepped in earlier, one said. It's Denise, another replied. She doesn't back down. But this isn't banter anymore, a third snapped. This is reputational damage. Social media was exploding. Clips of Eugene removing his microphone spread across platforms within minutes. Some headlines framed it as a meltdown. Others praised his dignity. Hashtags formed, some defending Denise's brutal honesty, others condemning the ambush. Eugene Levy trended worldwide. Denise was shown a phone backstage. She scrolled, her expression hardening as she read comments. That wasn't strength. That was bullying. Eugene Levy handled that with class. Loose Women crossed a line. She scoffed. They'll forget about this in a week, she muttered. But a flicker of doubt crept in. Later that evening, Eugene sat alone in his hotel room, tie loosened, jacket draped over a chair. The city lights glowed through the window, distant and indifferent. His publicist sat across from him. "We need to decide how to respond," she said carefully. "A statement, maybe an interview." Eugene shook his head. "I don't want a war," he said. "I want reflection." "Silence can be powerful," she agreed. "But so can clarity." Eugene thought for a long moment. "I didn't walk off because I was angry," he said quietly. "I walked off because staying would have meant betraying myself." The next morning, Loose Women opened with an unexpected segment. The host addressed the audience directly. "Yesterday's episode sparked strong reactions," she said. "We want to acknowledge that emotions ran high, and not everyone felt respected." Denise sat beside her, unusually quiet. No apology, just acknowledgement. But the damage had already been done. Behind the scenes, network executives called emergency meetings. Advertisers expressed concern. Viewers wrote thousands of emails, many praising Eugene's restraint, many questioning the show's approach. As for Eugene, he boarded a plane that afternoon, returning home without another word to the press. When he finally stepped into his house, the familiar warmth wrapped around him. Family photos. Quiet. Safety. He picked up his phone one last time and typed a short message on social media. Comedy is rooted in humanity. Respect is not a weakness, it's a responsibility. Nothing more. The post went viral within hours. And suddenly, the narrative shifted. What had begun as a confrontation became a conversation, about boundaries, about kindness, about whether entertainment justified humiliation. Denise watched it all unfold from her living room, the screen reflecting in her eyes. For the first time, she wondered, not publicly, not aloud, but privately. Had she finally gone too far? And somewhere across the ocean, Eugene Levy sat with his family, smiling gently. Not for the cameras, not for approval, but because he knew one thing for certain. Walking away had been the bravest role he'd ever played.